Imagine being lied to, being deceived and manipulated. Imagine being fed a false narrative about a true historical tragedy and hearing that narrative for so long that it becomes unquestionable truth. I'm here today to tell you about one of the biggest lies of modern times and about someone who's been posing as a hero for a very long time. Someone who's everywhere in plain sight, from Davos to the Olympics, for a very long time. Someone who's everywhere in plain sight, from Davos to the Olympics, when in reality, he's been taking you for a ride. That person is Rwanda's dictator, Paul Kagame. In 1996, as a young Canadian journalist, I landed a dream job in Paris covering the African continent. At the time, I was hungry for life experience and eager to learn. It turned out that Africa was the best teacher. Almost immediately into that job, I was drawn into covering the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide. Paul Kagame, who had been hailed a hero for supposedly stopping the genocide against Tutsis committed by Hutus, was now launching a military invasion of Congo. Ostensibly, his objective was to root out Hutu genocidaires who were living in the refugee camps inside Congo's border. But for those of us who were paying attention, we realized that Paul Kagame's Tutsi troops were systematically massacring Hutu refugees in Congo. In May and June of 1997, I went to Congo, a country the size of Western Europe. With the help of Congolese aid workers, I went into the forests, and what I saw was devastating. Hundreds of thousands of Hutu civilians had been chased across the country and hunted down like animals by Paul Kagame's Tutsi forces. I met wounded, traumatized, and starving women in the forests. I saw catatonic children, emaciated and covered in scabies. The testimony that I collected from the forests of Congo and the pictures I took of mass graves convinced me that Paul Kagame's forces had committed a genocide against Congolese and Rwandan Hutus in 1996 and 97. The United Nations would later classify these crimes as a possible genocide. After Congo, I crossed over on foot into Rwanda and interviewed more Hutu survivors who had just come home. I essentially asked them two questions, the same questions I had asked Rwandans in Congo. Why did you flee Rwanda in the first place in 1994? And decide to stay in Congolese refugee camps, enduring brutal conditions, instead of going home, where Paul Kagame had reportedly stopped the genocide in 1994, stopped the violence, and was restoring peace and prosperity to Rwanda. These Hutu survivors told me, one after the other, that in fact, Paul Kagame's Tutsi army had slaughtered Hutus during the genocide. Their relatives had been massacred. They were afraid of Kagame's army. They also told me that many Hutus who returned from Congo to Rwanda were disappearing. This was astounding to me. Remember, these were early days. I'd never heard these stories before, but I knew that I had to keep researching this story. These interviews were very dangerous to do inside Rwanda. But I realized that the official genocide narrative of one category of perpetrator, one category of victim, was a sham, and that Kagame was no savior. I have since spent almost 30 years. That doesn't mean we have to be his accomplices. We need to be accountable. We need to be responsible for our consumer choices and ensure that those choices are not fueling wars in Central Africa. I urge accountability not only for the sake of Rwandans and Congolese, but for our collective integrity.